Tonight, the burn center at the Korle Bu Teaching Hospital is crying for assistance as thousands of cedis worth investment into healthcare infrastructure go waste. Authorities there say to save lives, government must do more than just pay salaries. An intensive care and high dependency unit fully stocked has been sitting there for years. All that are needed for it to function fully are a few basic supplies and equipment. So what is it that makes government forget that the burns unit exists? Should it take a major national disaster to realize that our National Reconstructive Surgery and Burn Center is not fit for purpose? This is today's big story with me, Stephen Enti. Now, last Wednesday's fire disaster, which claimed several lives, shifted the attention of Ghanaians to the need for burns and reconstruction as a specialist care unit. 37 military hospitals took in about 36 burns patients, while Korle Bu, the National Reconstructive Surgery and Burn Center, only managed to take in 14. But the critical concern here is that the National Burn Center lacks what it takes to perform at its optimum. Today, I paid a visit to the hospital and was taken around the male ward in the company of two consultant plastic surgeons. The National Reconstructive Surgery and Burn Center about a week ago came to the attention of Ghanaians because it became the choice destination for the hundreds of Ghanaians who were burned in June 3rd's disaster, where over 150 people lost their lives. Now, the problem here at the burn center is that as critical as it is to healthcare delivery in Ghana, the center lacks the necessary logistics. Today, we're here to talk to the authorities here at the burn center to get a feel of how they've been doing their work. Several national disasters happen and people who are burnt are brought in here. But what happens when they come in here? Let's go in and find out.
And the worst of them has inhalational injuries. With inhalational injuries, your face gets burnt, and so your mouth gets burnt, your airway gets burnt, your throat gets burnt, and with time it swells up, and so you are choked, as in there's no air from outside in, and so that is what kills them. So for them, what we do is we put in a tube so that there's air, there's a communication between the outside and inside so that they can breathe in. And so for them, we put them on the tubing and put them on oxygen so that, and that is what keeps them. We had two of them that we had to intubate. His on is serious, and so he's still on. For this young man, he also had a tubing. He had about 7% burns and then inhalational burns. After about 3 days, the tube was taken out because he had recovered quite well. So we are hoping and waiting for him to recover and then would continue. The rest of them had also inhalational burns, but theirs were not serious enough to require intubation. So we've had the four others. All of them suffered burns to their face and to the upper limbs, especially upper trunk, anterior and posterior, front and back. Generally, they are all doing well. We've had to even send one home, but he'll be coming every 3 days for dressing. For the females, they are also doing quite well. We dilly-dallied about whether to intubate or not. But after observing for some time, we realized she could be fine. She'll be fine off the tube. So she has also made a good recovery, and we are treating. The problems we have is that they were in water. So some of them swallowed and breathing water, hard water into their lungs. So quite a number of them are having chest infections, and so we are having to deal with the chest infections. Another thing is once the skin barrier goes, you lose your protection, you lose the ability of the skin to keep water in. And so for this patient, we give 14 of this per day to make sure that they don't get dehydrated. The problems we have is that they were in water. So some of them swallowed and breathing water, hard water into their lungs. So quite a number of them are having chest infections. And so we are having to deal with the chest infections. Another thing is once the skin barrier goes, we need to, you lose your protection, you lose the ability of the skin to keep water in. And so for this patient, we give 14 of this per day to make sure that they don't get dehydrated. So it's antibiotics, the infusions, the dressing, and then something for pain. With him.
And these come at very high cost. I mean, each dressing you're looking at about 1,000 cedis.
Yes, for him. Each dressing would cost about 1,000 cedis. And we do the dressings every 3 days. Or as soon as it gets wet. If it gets wet, we have to change it.
So chances are that if you're able to get the necessary supplies, the necessary money actually to do all the dressing and then all the necessary antibiotics, then they live.
For burns, what kills them is money or the lack of it. Seriously, for burns, what kills them is the lack of it. For example, he's on morphine, which has been running continuously since he came on Thursday. Okay, he's on antibiotics, which costs 360 Ghana cedis per vial. He uses 3 of the vials per day, and that's what he's been on since he came. So you can do the math. My math is not that good, but you can do the math and you can imagine how. Okay, so. He can sit up.
No. If we have to go there, we'll go.
He can sit up. He can sit up. He makes us very happy because not too long ago he was on a tube and on oxygen, and once the swellings went down, he's able to breathe. And he put the tube in on Thursday. By Sunday afternoon, we could take the tube out. We took the tube out, and I was more than happy when he asked for food, and he has done quite well since then.
Right, we'll have to cut short our discussion there. For those of you who will be watching the Joy News Prime, actually do make a date with us on Joy News Prime, and we'll show you the entire footage so you can get a grasp of exactly what went on there. But the critical thing here is also that the reconstructive surgery and burns unit, which is called the Plastic Surgery Center, has a brand new intensive care and high dependency unit with a theater sitting there waiting for basic equipment to enable it function. Dr. Edem Anyigba took me around and answered some of my questions.
We have a list which we've given out to a few people. The president was here. He's had a copy. Other corporate organizations also have copies. So mainly one of the problems is to do with the finishing touches. So we need a few more things to get the place up and running. You don't want to run a place like this. It should be a totally dependent unit. You don't want to be going out across the street to do your labs. You need your lab equipment to do the labs as and when you need it, your X-ray machines. So that's one part of it. The second part of it has to do with the entire building. It was repurposed for this. So the contractor has done some part of the work. They are yet to hand it over officially. So they also have some bits to do and then officially hand it over. Then it will be handed over to us to use. So it's in 2 parts, from the contractor's part and then from the standpoint of the equipment that we need to get the place up and going.
But how long has this structure been here waiting for what you call finishing touches to be done?
The building itself was completed and commissioned somewhere about 6 years ago. And then the initial plan was to, the original plan for a burns facility is to get a burns center, a totally dedicated burns center. And the plans have been drawn and everything. It's going to cost in the region of $6 million to get that center up and running. The funds have not been coming. So in the meantime, this building, which was supposed to be offices and then some wards for patients, was repurposed to this ICU. and HDU and theaters. So that's what so the building in itself was commissioned in 2009, and then the work started here about 3 years ago. So this work has been ongoing for some time. The contractors had to knock down some walls and then make some adjustments to fit some of these things in. It could have been opened about 2 years ago if everything was provided, but there's been lapses here and there. So we are still expecting the finishing touches to be put in, these things supplied, and then we get it up and running.
I'm curious. I mean, as a Ghanaian, I'd like to see this center, which is critical to healthcare delivery, running with less stress. I mean, I'm looking at what happened on June 3rd, the number of people, some of whom we have seen already in the wards. How helpful would this facility be if it was up and running?
Okay. It's not going to solve. It brings with it newer problems, and then it takes away some old problems that we have. Newer problems in the sense that one of the patients you saw on the ward should actually be helped by one of these machines, so many of them around, to breathe. So now the patient is doing the work on himself with a tube in your airway and you trying to breathe. The pressure is high, so you do a lot more work trying to breathe. Okay, so you expend a lot more energy. If we had these machines, it will make breathing easier, it supports the breathing, and then we have the monitors that monitor you regularly, 24 round the clock, as you are being monitored if there's a change. And then your proximity of the labs. So you have a lab in here, you want your labs done instead of going across the street or the other side of the hospital. It's done in-house. You have a chest infection, we have x-ray machines that take your x-ray. So it makes the treatment easier.
Right, so that was my earlier interaction today, actually, with Dr. Edem Anyigba, who is a consultant plastic surgeon at the Burn Center. Let's get onto the telephone lines now and speak to another consultant plastic surgeon, Dr. Albert Painso. Who is joining us now. Good evening, sir, and thanks for your time.
Good evening, and thanks for inviting me.
Great. I'm grateful that you could join us, but I'll have you hold. I also have Sidua Hall on the other telephone line. Mr. Hall is the country focal person for Africa Platform for Universal Health Coverage, a very long title. Mr. Hall, welcome also. Let me start with you, Dr. Painso. It's very pretty sad. I mean, I visited the center today and I saw the brand new facility sitting there without being used. Why? What is stopping your unit from using this center? Is it the lack of basic things? I mean, what is it?
Thank you for the question. As Edem might have told you, there are certain equipment out there, but it's not the full set. And without the full set, we cannot use this to benefit our patients in any way. For example, I'm sure he talked about the ventilator. Once you have a patient on that machine taking over your breathing function, we need to be looking at your blood gases. As the blood is taking, we analyze the oxygen, the carbon dioxide, to be sure that the machine is supposed to take away carbon dioxide and give you oxygen. And it's the blood analyzer that will give us that information.
And you
so without that,
you cannot function.
Like we are working in the darkness with any patient that we put the machine on, and it's not best.
But so is it that you do not push for these things to be given to you? Because Dr. Anyigba told me that you need about $6 million to get the remaining equipment that you need for this ICU HDU center to operate. Why are you not getting the money?
Well, we've made a representation, and just a little correction. The $6 million is for the new center in total. What we need to be able to use, for example, the lift that we made in there will cost 120,000 euros. The lift, laundry machine, the blood, make that list available, and we're giving it to government, we're giving it to the ministry.
So really, you don't need 6 million. 6 million is the entire cost. You just need about 120,000, and that is not coming too.
Yes, 120,000 for the lift. But the position given to us by CFAO a couple of months back. So I'm sure even if we go to them now, today, they might give us a different quotation.
I know.
We've been working at it. And since this incident happened, we've had visits, and we've made our points again. We've sent it. I'm in contact with the deputy minister.
I can imagine.
Exchanging ideas, emails, but it's still not forthcoming.
Still not forthcoming. Dr. Pinzo, I'll have you hold. I mean, this discussion goes beyond just your hospital. Sidua Hall is a country focal person for a civil society group called Africa Platform for Universal Health Coverage. He's joining us now. Mr. Hall, so this is not only a peculiar problem for the burns unit. We do have specialist centers across the country. The cancer unit, the radiotherapy and cancer unit, for example, it just comes to mind straight away because I have been there a couple of months lately. Now, these specialist units appear to be starved of the necessary resources to enable them perform specialist healthcare. Is it that nobody cares, or we don't realize that specialist care is necessary? What is it really?
Right. Thank you very much, Stephen, and good evening to your listeners. Now, listening to the specialists that you've spoken to, one thing is clear, and that thing is health financing. You will realize that they have highlighted their challenges in terms of the limitations they have regarding the facilities that they need to deliver the needed services that they do not have. And the fact that over time, they have waited and this the financing they need to ensure that the requisite logistics are installed in these facilities are put in place. That financing is not coming. Across the board, or looking across the country, we have had this challenge. And that's why as civil society consistently we have said that, look, government will need to increase its funding to the health sector. I wouldn't say government has not been doing anything. That would not be honest and that would not be proper. Over the years, various governments have done something in terms of financing the health sector till date. But that financing is woefully inadequate.
Woefully inadequate, indeed.
Yes, until we get to a time where we take our health financing serious, prioritize the health sector, and make sure that critical sectors of the healthcare delivery, such as the emergency response units like the burns unit, the accident emergency center, maternal health unit, etc., until we provide our healthcare professional with the needed logistics. We may have a disaster. The victims may be carried to the health facilities, and we'll have many of them dying right there at the health facility. You will recall that when we had this very sad accident, disaster at the site of the fire and the flood, you will notice that the dead bodies were carried in a care truck.
That's right.
As though there were some blocks.
I know.
Very sad.
I know.
The question I ask is, where were our ambulance services?
That's right.
Where were they? So again, if we had a lot of people that would pull up over 100 or 300 that needed to be carried to health facilities across the city, you're going to have some of them come up in vehicles that are not appropriate. And
that's right.
So what will happen is that by the time some of them will be taken there, they would have been dead, even though they could have been saved, because if they were carried there in ambulances with paramedics, then they would have been attending to them. So that put a spotlight on how ill-prepared we are as a country, how unserious we have taken our health sector. And there are two key things when it comes to emergency healthcare: the logistics and the personnel.
Logistics and the personnel. Sidua Hall, let me pause you there. I mean, I think you've raised very critical issues, and I need to bounce them off Dr. Painso, who is still on the line. Dr. Painso, Sidua Hall is a health expert from an NGO Health. And so he is looking at it broadly. He raises critical issues of logistics and personnel. Does the burns unit have the personnel? I mean, I need to understand before we even continue the discussion with logistics.
Right. So even before I say that, let me add to what he said about the ambulance service. If these people are not taken to the health facilities by the correct means, some may die The other thing is that, which is also crucial, that the injuries of others may be worsened if they are not carried properly to their facilities. So that is the other point I want to make clear. And then back to logistics and personnel. Yes, we have personnel. We just spoke to Adam this afternoon. He has been trained and is ready to work. We've trained 2 other surgeons recently. So at the center now, we have 6 consultants. We have about 8 middle-level trainees who will be surgeons in the very near future. We have nurses who've been to the peri-operative school, critical care nurses. They are all here. So for personnel, yes, may need to maybe polish up the way these personnel will work when everything is done. But logistics, I'm afraid, is lacking.
Is lacking. I could see that. So are you able to tell me? Are you able to tell me that on the face of it, if we look at the facilities you have now, minus the ICU center, which is lying waste, actually, how many burns cases can you accept that will overstretch your facility?
At the moment, we have 18 beds, 6 for children, 6 for adult female, and 6 for adult male.
That's it.
So assuming we have more than this, we usually have to move patients around. But once they are not directly within the center and under our direct care, whatever care we give to them is not the best. So that is the situation now. And,
I see.
Yeah.
It's very dire.
Mr. Hall talking about the fact that with this particular problem, a lot of the people died. But assuming a lot survived, I don't know what the situation is.
Of course, there's also the possibility that many of them who were lying were not dead. They could have been traumatized and were in a state which might make everybody assume that they were dead.
Unconscious or something.
I know.
And when bodies are piled on top of each other, I mean, you can imagine.
Yeah, I can imagine, Dr. Pinso. But that brings us to a critical issue. Is it possible that the burns unit could be independent, autonomous of government funding, and then you can go on to generate your own internal revenue to perhaps finance your operations? Is this a possibility?
It is possible. When we go in that direction, it means that from our estimation, about 60 to 70% of us some form of help, either by the way of a foundation or some other group, helping or assisting them to pay the full bill, full
cost recovery
bill or full fund recovery. For most Ghanaians, they cannot afford.
They cannot afford. So, I can imagine.
Yes, but then the system, the center is such that we can't operate that way. But then when it comes to that, then they have to pay for every item, that is, give them itemized bill without any subsidy at all.
That is going to be very difficult.
I doubt how many of our fellow Ghanaians...
I know. I mean, one of the patients whom I interacted with, I got the impression from Dr. Nsafo that in a day, they could be spending up to about 1,900 Ghana cedis a day. If they don't have it, then...
Who is critically injured.
Very sad situation we have on our hand.
And if you don't have that money, then your guess is as good as mine.
Guess is as good as mine. I can imagine. Dr. Pinso, we're grateful, though, that you could join us on today's Big Story. We do hope that we can raise more awareness over the situation there at the plastic surgery unit and get the necessary...
our fellow Ghanaians to achieve that goal. And we hope that we'll get help to be able to do that. Good evening to your listeners, and thanks for calling.
Thank you very much. So that's Dr. Albert Paintsel, who is a consultant plastic surgeon at the Burns Center here in Accra, the National Teaching Hospital, Korle Bu. Sidwa Hall is a country focal person for the platform for universal health coverage. Is still on the line. Mr. Hall, critically, when we have a situation like that on our hand, I must emphasize that we're only focusing on the burns unit. There could be many more specialist units across the country, including the ambulance service, actually, which are very underfunded. Now, talking about funding, which options are available for these health institutions or units within health centers to explore in order to improve their funding mechanisms?
All right, thank you very much. You will recall that in 2004, when massive tsunami wave hit SARS, Indonesia, and I'm talking of countries such as India, Maldives, Timor-Leste, Korea Republic, etc. This will cause destruction and death of unbelievable scale. What did they do? They were with the WHO Southeast Regional Office, and they developed emergency preparedness plan. And after that, they worked with them to set up emergency fund. So all the countries in the region, they are using the emergency preparedness plan and continuously revising it. Even those that were not affected are using it because they are learning from their experience. So what will this fund do? Increasingly, this fund is what they will draw on in the event that they have emergency. But even that, they are not going to wait for the emergency to come. So they are going to draw it to develop their capacity, build their capacity, the human resource and the logistics. So these are some of the lessons we have to learn as a country. You recall over the years, we have had terrible road accidents. We have also talked about high maternal mortality, where women are taken to the emergency room, and then sometimes they do not come out, or they come out without the baby, etc. And healthcare providers have cried continuously about this situation. For us as a civil society, we have continuously pointed out what we need to do as a country. We have the opportunity to raise resources in country, and we have pointed out so many areas that whilst we are looking for external funding, we can raise money there. And we said, for example, we need to collect property rates. There are a lot of building houses, private, whatever, commercial. We can collect property rates, and this is one area we have not exploited as a country, and we need to collect it because house owners are taking killer rent from tenants, and they are not paying the appropriate rate. We should be able to raise money domestically to finance our health. That's one area. We also know that we have a lot of companies that are polluting our atmosphere. For example, you see this black hole, but they are choking all the gutters. Are we collecting the proper tax from some of these companies? We have the mining company. We have not properly taxed them. Can we ring fence our oil sector to get certain percentage to finance our health care? These are some of the areas we can raise money.
Right. Sido Hall, we're grateful for your time. Sido Hall is a country focal person for the Africa Platform for Universal Health Coverage. So we're grateful to all of you for making time. And as you saw, the situation there at the Korle Bu Burns Center is dire, and they require assistance in order to survive. They have a tall list of things that they want for the intensive care unit to operate. They need things like laundry machines, hydraulic bath trolleys, shower heads, blood gas analyzers, blood bank fridge, provision of oxygen plants or source, special trolleys for transporting patients to the ICU, ICU consumables, oxygen face masks, simple things like that, an extra stool in the theater. So I must say that we have tried very hard to get a response from the Ministry of Health, but we didn't get through. But we're hopeful that subsequently we will try and get responses from them and help save the Burns Center at Korle Bu. My name is Stephen Enti, and we'll be right back with Joe News Interactive. Do stay.